As you might know, psychology defines itself as a scientific discipline. In other words, psychology uses systematic research methods to increase knowledge and understanding. It's probably not surprising, then, that the reading for this class includes a lot of information about research and theories. You've probably learned about research in other classes, and this is not a research methods class, so we won't go into much detail about the process. But I do want to make sure you're thinking about research in the same way we use it in this context. You'll need to thoroughly understand two related topics, too, so this is helpful context. Those concepts are reliability and validity, by the way. You can think about this as the Twitter version of research methods. Just enough information to get you thinking about the important points. The graphic in this slide might seem familiar. It's a simple overview of the scientific method. When we talk about research in psychology, we're talking about a process that includes the majority of these steps, if not all of them. Sometimes we don't get to the report results step, and sometimes the first three steps get blended together. But in psychology, we always collect data if we do a study. That might be different from how you've heard about or thought about research. Sometimes reading and writing about a topic is called a research paper. In the scientific method, though, that's just the see what we know step. In psychology, it's called a literature review when we write a paper based on the thoughts and findings of others. Sometimes it seems like research and reading about the results can seem more complicated than it's worth, especially if we hear about fraudulent data, misinterpretation, or findings that don't stand up the test of time. Popular media reports and claims in social media can make it even easier to discount science at times, too, given the perspectives they provide. Scientific research can be incredibly valuable, though, in helping us understand personal experiences and in informing the decision-making in organizations. There are a few reasons I say that. First, the process allows for an accumulation of knowledge. If the results of a study are presented, published, or otherwise available to others, they're presented in the context of previous work, as depicted in that graphic on the last slide. So they allow other researchers to continue to add knowledge and understanding. The process is also based on systematic methods that allow for descriptions of behavior and processes, as well as an understanding of how the things are related. Research methods are sort of like building blocks, and they can be combined in different ways, a process that's called research design. I'll explain that in a minute. Another reason research is important is that the conclusions are based on data from multiple people, organizations, and so forth. That allows for more confidence about the patterns that emerge. It also means research can help us understand what's likely to happen in a given situation, so we don't have to see it for ourselves. And can reduce the chances of using time, energy, and money to do something that won't work. There are two important things to keep in mind, though, when deciding how we can use information from research. One is whether the study was carried out in a way that was free from bias and reduces the chances of errors. The peer review process helps us know about those things. The idea is that other researchers who are familiar with the topic, the peers, review the study and the results to see if they're credible. Electronic journals and other internet-based sources make it a little tricky to know if a study was peer-reviewed. You'll learn more about that in another class, so for now you can just keep in mind it's important, and the materials for this class are all based on peer-reviewed research. The other thing to keep in mind is that research in psychology presents conclusions about the likelihood of something happening or about things being related, not rules. We also don't say we prove. We have a number of techniques to consider whether the data in the study represents larger groups, but people are rarely entirely alike in any way. Statistical processes are also based on the likelihood of something happening, and that likelihood is rarely 100%. As you're thinking about how research can be used to help understand what will happen or why something happened, it's helpful to keep in mind the way the methods are used, called the research design, and that influences the conclusions we can draw from a particular study. Using different research design provides knowledge about different types of relationship. An experimental design is the only one that allows for conclusions about cause and effect. Quasi and non-experimental designs help us understand other kinds of relationships. For example, a non-experimental design about job design, and job satisfaction could allow for conclusions about whether people who have jobs with higher levels of independence are more likely to be satisfied with their job. But that might be because independence influences something else that's related to job satisfaction. An experimental study would control other potential influences on satisfaction and put people in groups to do jobs with different levels of independence so that the study could draw a conclusion about whether variations in independence cause variations in job satisfaction. One reason to understand what we mean by research and why it's important is because industrial and organizational psychology, a subfield of psychology that focuses on work settings, is based on the idea of the scientist-practitioner model. That means that IO psychology promotes the use of research-like processes in organizations and encourages decision-making based on research. The definition of the scientist-practitioner model in the text emphasizes that part of the model, using research to inform practice. That means research needs to be relevant to people working in organizations, though, which is why I depict it as being a reciprocal relationship. So at the beginning of this recording, I mentioned this is like the Twitter version of research methods. If you haven't already, you might stop to think about what you would tweet. Go ahead and pause this recording to do that. So what would I tweet? Here's one thing that comes to mind. Save time, save money, and know that you're not alone. Use systematic processes from research to analyze the situation.